This is the Youthful and Useful podcast by Leap Africa.
There is a risk of some of these days becoming hype. And the hype is everybody wants to associate with hype. Everybody wants to associate with trends. Everybody wants to participate in things because that's what is trendy and topical for the moment. But the commitment and the dedication, the action that should follow the hype may sometimes be lacking.
You know, how do you exercise your rights and you're not mobbed or you're not even killed in the process?
Sometimes the approach that has been taken when it comes to gender equality, gender equity, women's empowerment has been antagonistic to men. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And because of that, it has alienated some men, some who could be male allies, and it has also made some women, females who have men that they love, have boys that they love, also feel like one needs the other needs the other. There's no alienate men, don't alienate. So how we do it matters a lot.
Hi, and welcome to our podcast, Youthful and Useful. Today, we have an amazing personality with us today because it is International Women's Day. And the theme for International Women's Day today is for all women and girls, rights, equality, and empowerment. And to join me on this conversation today is our very delectable, amazing, and intelligent Director of Programs at Leap Africa, Amabelle Nwakanma. Hello, Amabelle. It's nice to have you here today.
Hi, Derisala. Thank you so much for having me, hosting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to see you too. And so I just want to really go up to the conversation that we're going to be having today. What do you think about the International Women's Day? What do you think about the whole celebration? Is it just the normal hashtag, or what exactly are we trying to do?
I think that National Women's Day is just a day to celebrate and highlight and emphasize the importance of women's equality, gender equality, gender equity, women's empowerment. And the reason why it's so important, or it has been so important historically, is because of the disparities in just the opportunities for women and men. Women have generally, historically, been almost like second-class citizens around the world. There's been high patriarchy, still is in many parts of the world. And so a day like today was crafted to say, you know what, let's celebrate women. Let's acknowledge their contributions, what they do, who they are, and also as a way to inspire young women who are potentially in places where they don't see a lot of inspiration or they don't have a lot of inspiration. So when they see there's a day like this and they see women like them, they can aspire to be something. They can aspire for more. And so International Women's Day is just really a day to catalyze the discourse around gender equality, gender equity, women's empowerment, girls' empowerment, and also to inspire a new set of women, young women who are coming into their own. So I think it's a beautiful day. I think it's a very important day to focus on. But let's not get lost in the hype and the trend of it, and let's think about what the message is behind it.
Thank you. I think, and on that, I was going to ask you, what do you think that this celebration changes anything for women?
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
You know, there is a risk of some of these days becoming hype. And the hype is everybody wants to associate with hype. Everybody wants to associate with trends. Everybody wants to participate in things because that's what is trendy and topical for the moment. But the commitment and the dedication, the action that should follow the hype may sometimes be lacking. And you find that the people who actually are the ones that follow the hype, who actually take action to implement and integrate and implement interventions that bridge these gaps that we've mentioned, they are not as much as people that are making all the noise. In fact, sometimes the people who are doing so much of the work are not even making a lot of noise. They're just doing the work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there also does need to be a day like this so that people who are joining all these random webinars and who are seeing all these random news clips about things about women and all the achievements and all the limitations and the gaps, they're also schooled. And the knowledge is being increased. They're gaining more information that is helpful. So sometimes these days are useful because they inspire a new set of activists and a new set of doers. So while the risk of the hype is there, but you cannot throw the baby out with the bathwater. You still need a day like this to be leveraged so that more things can be said and done. And potentially there's a traction that is being that's catalyzed, through all these things that we're doing. So
Yeah, and I think that that's really great. I believe strongly that there are people who are doing the work who are not really noising what they are doing abroad, and that's a big problem. And so I just really thought about it and looking at the women themselves. And my question is that just some women who actually think that we're making so much noise about this. They think they really don't care about their empowerment or rights. They just want to be. I've had somebody say, why does it look like we just want to take authority from men? It's not so deep. Let's leave the men in. What do we do? What do we say about these women? How do we even empower these women who aren't concerned, who are really okay with the status quo, who are like the gatekeepers of patriarchy? Yeah.
And you always find those, by the way.
Yeah.
And I don't take offense at that. I've learned that people do things, say things, and act from their level of knowledge. And sometimes that level can be very, very low. And people are also socialized a particular way. And they act and do from what they know. Again, just what I said.
Yeah.
So they can't go beyond what their framework is. So what needs to happen is that they need to understand and learn new paradigms. And that's part of why a day like IWD is very important, because it helps sometimes these women to understand things that they may not easily understand. Another thing I would say is sometimes the approach that has been taken when it comes to gender equality, gender equity, women's empowerment has been antagonistic to men. That's the truth.
Yeah.
And because of that, it has alienated some men, some who can be male allies. And it has also made some women, females who have men that they love, have boys that they love, also feel like, So you can imagine a boy mom who has only sons and nobody's talking about daughters. She doesn't have a daughter. So for her, it's like, okay, what about my boys? And so the approach has to also be managed well. Ultimately, we need each other. We can't afford to make enemies. We need to be forging allyship. We need to be having and nurturing allies in the system, in both divides. So I don't even like to see it as a divide. We need each other.
Yeah.
One needs the other needs the other. There's no, alienate men, don't alienate. So how we do it matters a lot. I think that, again, women who are gatekeepers as well, there's also a bit of a fear. People fear the unknown. If they've known this all their lives, what does it mean to be in a different state? They don't have a framework. They don't have a picture of what that could be sometimes. And so again, they're acting and functioning from what they do not know. Like they don't know that this is potentially creating harm for themselves and the women in their lives, their younger ones, their daughters. And so they'll think that the way that they know, because it's the only way they know, is a better way, because they don't know a better way.
Yeah.
If you know what I
From
mean.
what they knew already.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have to be patient with the process. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. They're not going to change things overnight. You need to be thinking about forging allies. That's for me the thing that is underlying for me. How are you going to make friends? When you make friends, you can influence friends.
That's true.
If you're making enemies, they're going to be at war always. We do not want to be at war always. We know there's a battle in terms of changing norms and ideas and ideals, but you do it by influence, and influence happens through relationship and allyship.
Yeah, amazing. Influence happens through relationship and allyship. On that, I'm just really thinking through the theme for the International Women's Day again. And, for all women and girls, rights, equality, and empowerment. And sometimes I look at how we have a lot of rights of women being infringed on. I'm taking back on a story of when I'd gone to the market with a friend of mine when I was in university. I wanted to buy some clothes at Yaba. So sometimes in the way for other people not to know what time you're buying stuff, the kind of clothes you're buying, because it's usually second hand. So you go at night. And it happens so funny that my friend was at my back and I felt like somebody tapped me on my hands. I'm like, ooh. So I thought it was my friend. So I'm like, stop
Your friend,
being
the
funny.
guy?
My friend is a lady.
Okay.
So I'm like, stop being funny. And, we just kept moving. Then the person did it again. And then I'm telling, what is wrong with you? It was a guy. I was really shocked. And, out of the shock, I jumped and I almost slapped him. And there was an opera. Why would you want to slap a man? Yeah, there was, why would you want to slap a man? How dare you? And I literally saw all the guys almost take up their arms because they felt that a woman had just disrespected a man. How do you even exercise your rights as a woman? How do you exercise your rights and you're not mobbed or you're not even killed in the process of it? And just so many stories. There was a very funny story of a lady who had said that she was being raped somewhere in India and gone to the police station to report. And all the guys that were there raped her, who were police officers. How do we enforce our rights? What do we do?
It's a very heavy question.
I know. So please take your time.
When it comes to sexual assault and gender-based violence, it's really sad what happened. I was speaking once, I think it was on a news station many years ago, and I was saying that because, of course, I've worked a lot in the gender mainstreaming, women empowerment field. I'm very passionate about empowering women and girls and young people. And I just decided to take a poll just of people I know, because I work with so many women and girls. Those who I know who are in my circle. So these are professional women, career women, strong, independent women. And of course, those who I serve and support who are not a bit more disenfranchised and disempowered. And just take a poll of how many of you have experienced some sort of sexual assault, some sort of sexual violation, some sort of violence towards you. Every single one.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 for 10.
Yeah.
And this was a white poll. I don't know, and this is especially in the context of in Nigeria, I don't know any single female who has not had an experience like what you've shared.
I don't know too. You're right.
Many people have had near rape experiences. Many people have had sexual assaults full on by people they trust, people they don't trust, people they know, people they don't know.
No.
It's sad to say the least. And this is why the fight is very real. This is why I said earlier that it is a war, because there's a normalization of these things. So look at your case. Nobody said, why would you go and tap the ass of a woman you don't know? What if that's somebody's wife? You don't know who she is. Nobody corrected that, but it corrected the fact that you retaliated. How dare you retaliate?
Yeah.
How dare you not be meek and accepting of clear assault? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I would say when it comes to standing for your rights is, firstly, you should know your rights. Firstly. Secondly, also be wise. You cannot take on a mob of men. You cannot. So you should make your point and you keep it moving in that moment for your safety, because it will only escalate.
Yeah.
And then the point would have been, well, her too, though. If anything happened to you, why did she now? Can she fight a man? Why did she?
Yeah.
You'll still be the victim that is blamed. You need to know when to pick your battles. That's also wisdom. You need to know when to keep it moving in the interest of your welfare and well-being. Now, in that case, that dude, he had every right for you to be upset with him. And that is a seed you've probably planted. Like, you have no right to do that. That's problematic. And he may tomorrow not try it on another person. I don't know. Hopefully he's a learner, someone that can learn.
Hopefully.
Some people don't. But as women, we have to be very vigilant about the things we do, how we do it. And also be a bit more regulated and self-restrained, because the journey of a woman is interesting. You will contend with those things. I remember, I don't know if you saw this poll that went around, and they said, if there was no men in the world, do you see the poll? What would you do?
Yeah.
And a majority of women said, I will walk out, I will just take a stroll at night, I will keep my headphones out, put my headphones on, listen to music.
What I want.
Everyone talked about how safe they would feel to do things that they don't feel safe doing now. Because as a woman now, you walk in the evening and you see a group of men, you're going to tense up.
Yeah.
Even if it's one man.
Yeah.
But imagine if there was no man in the world. That was the question. Everyone talked about, I would just go, I would be free, I would just go out at night, I'll work at 12 midnight, I'll take strolls. It was amazing. And it just goes to show that the journey and the lived experience of women is one of a little bit of hypervigilance, a bit of fear and tension and anxiety. That should change. That needs to
So,
change.
I believe so. Thank you very much, Amabelle. I like the fact that you mentioned, even applying wisdom, and because you can't take on a movement. It's not.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't even take on one
That
man.
is true.
So if you have to flee, please do flee. And so you talked about empowerment. You work in the development space. What does and I feel like empowerment is a word that is being thrown around. Should somebody says women don't want to be empowered, they just want their voices to be amplified. What does empowerment mean in practice for you as somebody who is in the development space?
So, empowerment is a word that's very overused. I've even used it so much in this conversation because
I
that's,
know.
for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I think that the reason why that word is very overused or used is because of the reality that women feel a lot of time disempowered. I imagine now you were alone when this guy did that thing to you and you had the mob of people around you. Maybe even in that moment, even with your friend, you may have probably have been scared a little bit.
Yeah, I was scared.
Yeah. How disempowering is that? You know that you were in the right. You know that you have every right to be indignant and upset. But here you are not being able to do anything. In fact, being turned on because you dare to speak. That's very disempowering.
My friend ran away actually.
And left you.
Yeah.
You're driving my point. So when you talk about empowerment, I know a lot of times now it's connoted with go and teach somebody a skill, give them some money, give them starter kit. Nothing wrong with that. But that's not that's not the main thing for me. I have a background in psychology. I studied behavioral neuroscience, and understanding that a majority of how we are and who we are is how we think, is how our brain, how our central nervous system is wired. And because of how women are socialized from birth, we are wired physiologically and psychologically to be disempowered in the mind, not just in action. So I read a research, this was a few years ago, I read research about, I think this was in South America, and they wanted to change the outcomes of business owners. So they noticed that male entrepreneurs and female entrepreneurs, even when they give them the same training, the same starter kits, the same everything, they normalized, they standardized it. The men, when it comes to profiteering or profit making, outdid the women, and they were trying to understand what is going on, because we've normalized and standardized all the things that we're giving you. And so they did a bit of deeper diving to understand, because they were just giving the tools and the skills, but they didn't really unpack what was happening inside. So they decided to unpack what was happening inside men and women. And they found that even when you upskill and train and build the capacity of women, their thinking has already been so limited that they're not, the confidence that men tend to have, they did not have it. The way they saw themselves, even as business owners, as leaders, the imposter syndrome we talk about a lot, there was more with them. So it affected how they did their business in such a way that it affected their business outcomes. So the man was more likely to be confident to go and pitch, even if he didn't have a clue. But he would just go. He was able to speak confidently about his things. Women was a bit more, like unsure, and that actually translated into the fact that their one business was profit making versus the other, which was not as profit making. And so it starts with, how do we even think? And I believe in the empowerment from inside out. How we see ourselves, the identity that that is entrenched in us. Who are you as a woman? What do you believe you can do? What do you believe you can accomplish? The rights that you have, how do you own it? How do you express it? That is, to me, where empowerment starts. So why I believe so much in empowerment: teach me a skill, build my capacity, bridge the education gaps I face. But do not forget that as a whole of person, there's an internal world that needs to also be empowered, needs to be supported, needs to be equipped adequately. That also now affects how well I'm able to receive all the things you're giving me from the outside.
Thank you very much, Amabelle. That's very, very wise. Starting from the mind, whatever you give, if the mind doesn't change, then nothing happens.
Absolutely.
And yes, so let me open the elephant in the room. let me bring it in.
Okay.
And so a lot of women some women would say that they do not really believe in women supporting women. And this story is on and on. They bring in my cousin had recently told me how she was super comfortable being friends with men. She said, "Oh, dear, men will easily uplift you without even asking for anything. But women, are we really happy?" And I feel like we've had this conversation before. We're talking about, maybe about scarcity of the resources. So, what do you think about this? And how should women, support each other really positively and say, "Hey, come on, let's work together. Let's see our kinds on the table and make things work effectively."
Do we have 2 days, 48 hours to talk about this? Because I want to debunk some things here. Let me debunk some
Please
things.
do.
Let me start. If men, as the narrative goes, were the allies, and they're wonderful men, by the way. I have
Yeah.
2 brothers. I mean, so this is not a bashing them, but I'm just trying to say, if it's true that, men, they'll push you forward, there should be no gender equality fight.
Thank you.
There should be none. The people who have consistently fought for equality have been who?
Women.
The fact that they say that we walked so you can what? Run.
Right.
Is who?
The women.
That's not to say that there were not male allies in all those stories. They were. But even the male allies were turned against because of what they were doing. The truth is, women do support women. But what I find is there's a narrative that's perpetuated that I do not agree with, which is that the fact that you had a bad boss or you had a woman who competed or was not good to you does not make it doctrine that women don't support women.
Absolutely.
My story has been primarily that women have supported me. I cannot relate to that statement. My story has been that primarily I have supported women. No woman can relate to the fact that I don't support. None. I mean, I dare that person. This is a public podcast to say, "Remember, you didn't support me." I go out of my way personally because I'm passionate about supporting women and empowering women and uplifting women. But I've also been a recipient of women that have championed me, empowered me, uplifted me. It's the same thing I feel about the race thing. I've never felt like I was there's never been any overt racism towards me. And I have been the singular Black person on different teams for many years in my life, in different settings. And I've never felt, they were racist towards me. Never. Not once. Even in places where I feel like maybe there were only 10 Black people in the whole city.
Wow.
So I struggle with that. I don't accept it. I believe that when you are primed to believe that, or you say that enough, even a woman having a bad day, maybe she's having cramps and her face is not smiled the right way, you have said it, you're going to say, see how she looked at me. You have added, you have ascribed motive and intention that is negative towards you, whereas she's just a woman being a woman having a funny day.
Yeah, and that's
So
okay.
we need to really disabuse ourselves of that notion that women do not support women. Are there bad women who do not support? Absolutely. They're horrible women bosses. So are there horrible male bosses.
Absolutely.
There are also many men that do not promote you because you didn't sleep with them. There are many men who stand. They would rather give a man that is not... I just literally read a story 2 days ago. The lady said her husband and it was a job they saw. Her husband and her applied for the job. She is more educated than her husband, has more years of experience related to the job, and she applied. Her husband did not even have a related degree for that job, does not have a master's at the time, and he was pivoting. So he doesn't even have any experience in that role, where she had. And they offered her a salary, they offered him $20,000 more.
Wow.
She's like, she just said, keep it moving, thank you. Her husband took the job. She went, waited, she got a better job, better paying in another place. But point is, it was male. This is the male-dominated world. It's part of the reasons why we have this gender equality and gender equity, like industry, is because they haven't given spaces. Now we have to fight for the spaces. So it's not true. It's just that in some cases, it feels like you're competing for limited resources and access. So it looks like they're pitting us against each other. But we're not really, we don't have to accept that narrative. And I don't.
Yeah. And I don't as well. And I can say, of course, of Amabelle, that, I've seen you, fight a lot for the women in your space. And I've also had women, my mentors are women. So, and I can imagine my career sponsors are women as well. So
Exactly.
I can definitely relates with that statement. And so, the theme for this year says for all women and girls and rights, equality, empowerment. I'm thinking, should we really say for all women and girls? Because understanding that the struggles of women and girls are different. The struggles for the women and girls in America is somewhat different to the struggles of women and girls in Africa. Shouldn't we, focus more on should we not shouldn't we not should we focus more on the women and girls who are marginalized, maybe underprivileged to some of these things? What do you think about that?
So I understand the tagline. I understand why they say for all women and girls, but there's always a balance in my head. There's always a balance to these things. My partner will always say, balance everything, right? And when you say for only this group, by the wording alone, you're excluding a group, and you're trying not to exclude. The nature of the women gender equality movement is that let's all be included. That's the whole premise. So you cannot only think about one group. On the other hand, when you focus on the group, then you bring the requisite attention to that group, which is important. So what that tagline is saying, in my opinion, as I understand it, is it's not just for the women in the cities. It's not just for the women who are the haves. It's not just for the women who are privileged. But what about the women who you cannot see, nameless, faceless, in the remote interior regions? For them too. That's how I say that. So in other words, it's answering your question, which is saying not just for the easy to reach, easy to access, people who may have opportunities that, it might be less, but it's still there, versus people who you don't even see. You have to literally go through almost like mud to get to them. For them too. For those women and girls too. People that live in remote regions that maybe is 100 people in the whole village, but there are women and girls and children that for them too. Yeah, that's how I see it.
Yeah, for the women and girls.
For all so of us. All underscored for me is saying those two.
Yeah.
Whereas some people will say, oh, but all, meaning like you were asking, what about those marginalized? But that's why all is there. Yeah. It's saying those ones too. Think about them.
For those two.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Amabelle, if you could think of, if you have a magic wand and you could fix one thing, I know there could be a lot of things, but just one thing that I could fix for women, facing challenges, what would it be? One thing.
That I could fix for women?
Yeah.
All women?
All women. All those women.
I would say the one thing I would love to be able to give all women is a positive, abundant, unlimited identity, sense of self. That there's nothing that is limited for them, that they can do it all. And by that, all doesn't mean you have to be everything. It means that there's nothing you cannot strive for, push for, try. Because a lot of women, the fear of trying and failing, because we have been raised to be somewhat performative and perfectionistic, the fear of failing and not being perfect stops us from doing anything. And so there are many exceptionally gifted, competent women who the world will never hear about or know about, because they have an identity that's steeped in limitation and constraint and not being able to. So if I could give something to every woman, girl on earth, is an identity that's abundant about themselves, positive and unlimited.
An identity that is abundant about themselves, positive and unlimited. I really love that. And I think that at this juncture we'd like to end. But before we end, I just really want to ask, when we come back in the next say 10 years, when you look at International Women's Day, what would you love to see that has changed? What would you like to see that has changed?
I would love a generation of women and men. So 10 years time, boys will be men, girls will be women.
Yeah.
I would love that generation, the upcoming generation of women and men, to be so desensitized to equality that it's not anything to talk about. It's not special. Yeah. It's like it's so normalized. It's so mainstreamed that it's not a second thought about an opportunity for a man, an opportunity for a woman, but we also understand our functional differences. what we're able to do,
Yeah.
who we are, I would hope that in 10 years' time and beyond, this conversation is not as necessary as it is now. Yeah.
And I would hope that too. I would hope that we don't have to come on a podcast anymore, to talk about gender equality, talk about empowering women. That it would just really be the norm that we all live with, and that our daughters who grow into this, and our sisters are no longer stigmatized or discriminated against because of their gender.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining today, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please go to our YouTube channel, turn on the subscription button, and we would love to have you join us on a lot more of our conversations. Thank you, and happy International Women's Day.
Thank you. Happy International Women's Day.